Today's video was brought to you by eWin Racing, the best source for gaming chairs and desks for those long gaming sessions. We have a playlist of our eWin chair and desk videos linked in the video description below. Save 30% off of everything using the discount code TECHDEALS. More details at the end of the video. Saucy comes in with a question regarding high-end CPUs.
And it is Tech. I saw you on Twitter testing the 5950X with the 3080. What are your thoughts on 16 cores for gaming?
Well, first of all, at this point in March of 2021, if you've got 5950X money, you probably should have a 3090, not a 3080. The reason I was testing with a 3080 is because I had started my CPU comparison series with a 3080, and as I'm adding the upcoming 11th generation Rocket Lake, which is not what I was testing here, but I'm getting ready for it, you just have to continue with the same GPU or you have to go back and redo all your old tests. So there's that. Now I was testing at 1440p, high detail, in the Division 2. Now, the Division 2 is not a brand new game. In fact, it is nearly two and a half.
Ooh, 2.5
years old. It came out in 2018.
The end.
And now we are in the spring of 2021. So 2.5-year-old game. Now, in fairness, the Division 2 is actually pretty well optimized. The Division 2 is completely playable on a 4-core processor. So you might say, there's no point in testing it on a 16-core 32-thread. What is Tech smoking? This is a waste of time. This is dumb. No gamer needs that many cores. This is an outrage, you say.
But is it smooth?
You're spoiling the reveal.
Sorry. I could make my 720p joke again and then have someone call me an idiot. It was a joke.
So I'm testing 1440p high detail. And this is a CPU test.
Yes.
And the reason for this is twofold. Number one, I believe in the third decade of the 21st century, 1440p is the new 1080p. Just like we no longer test 720p. If you go back a few years, CPU tests very often used 720p a few years ago. But they stopped when that just became dumb and stupid.
Well, we got 8K and 12K cameras now.
1080p. Nebraska Furniture Mart now sells a 65-inch true 8K television. Not upscaled or simulated. 8 real K.
We get to go shopping?
For $2,000.
Better than a video card.
The 4K TVs could be had for under $500.
Oh.
1080p is...
I remember when we spent near $3,000 on our 1080p.
Yes, but that was nearly 10 years ago.
That was a while ago.
So, 1440p is the new 1080p. Furthermore, raise your hand if you believe a Ryzen 9 5950X Zen 3 16-core 32-thread processor with 32 gigs of DDR4 3600 CL16 on a completely optimized test bench. Not a personal computer. Oh, there's 18 things running in the background. No, this is a clean install of Windows with clean drivers on an open-air test bench with absolutely nada on it. This is my test machine. RTX 3080. Is the 3080 the bottleneck at 1440p? Or is an $800 Ryzen 9 5950X 16-core 32-thread chip the bottleneck? Well, it's the CPU. We are using 71% or 23 of the 32 threads. Now, games, of course, are going to hop around threads because one thread's going to load, the next thread will prefetch. And if you actually watch the cores in use, they're all being used to an extent, and there's thread hopping going on and load balancing going on. But if you've got 71% usage, all of your cores are in use. And you are into the SMT, hyper-threading for Intel, but for AMD SMT. Notice that our graphics card up here at the top is at 88%. Now, I tested this for 37 minutes of live gameplay, not the built-in benchmark, running around, engaging enemies, doing various combats. There were times it dropped down to only 50 or 55% usage, and there were times it actually was a bit higher than this. That was not the peak. It's close to it, but that was not the peak. It virtually never hit 100% usage on the video card.
On a 3080.
Now notice, this is the frame time graph down here.
That's pretty smooth.
For 37 minutes of gameplay, the frame time graph is like butter. I mean, it's not absolutely perfect because you notice the real-time performance is the 164, the rolling average is 159, and the rolling 1% low is the 113. So there's still a decent gap between the 1% low and the average. So there is some variance going on. Had this been capped at 120 or 144 frames per second, this would have been even smoother because instead of bouncing off of the limits of performance, you'd then be, because at some point, there's always a bottleneck. And I think this is a very common misconception. You always have a bottleneck. Well, I'm going to get rid of my bottlenecks.
Somewhere.
That's not how anything works. Either your CPU is the bottleneck, or the graphics card is the bottleneck, or the game engine is the bottleneck because it's not designed to go any faster. There's a cap, like Fallout 4, there's a cap put in it.
Well, World of Warships has a cap.
World of Warships, it's liftable, but it has a cap. Or GTA 5 when you get beyond 155 frames per second and the engine breaks because it just was never designed to do it. Or system memory or storage or your monitor. If you have a 1440p 144 hertz monitor, you can't display 164 frames per second. The monitor's not physically capable of it. So your bottleneck then becomes your monitor will start dropping frames. Or, well, the video card can send the frames to the monitor, but the monitor won't draw them.
It'll just...
And so you really want your game running no faster than your monitor because otherwise you get dropped frames and tearing and jumps and stutters and whatnot.
I wonder how many... If that happens to people and they're like, what's going on?
That should be a 3-minute quick guide.
It should be.
So, here's the funny thing. That same scene would play on an i7 7700K 4-core, 8-thread CPU. The CPU would be heavily overloaded. The frame time graph would be worse. You would notice it in specific places in the game. It would be fine, and then it wouldn't be. And here's what would really happen. And I say this because I have done that. I have played this game. I've got hundreds of hours in this game. It's one of my favorite games. It's great until it isn't, and you get used to it, and you adapt to it.
They do that.
There's a very important statement here that gets missed and that people get confused about. Just because a game does not need more than 4 or 6 cores does not mean that it cannot use more than 4 or 6 cores. It uses these cores to make it really smooth and heavy combat. It uses those cores to smooth out the frame time. It uses those cores to improve the responsiveness with the online server. And it's good to have those cores as spares in the event you want to run something in the background. Now, we are answering a question that was asked by Christoph Saucy about my thoughts of gaming on a 16-core CPU. I do not recommend most people buy a 16-core chip only because this is sort of an extreme case. This is very high-end, premium gaming. It doesn't matter for most people. And if we frame limited this to 60 frames per second at 1440p, that usage would go down, graphics card usage would go down, and you would need way less computer, way less graphics card, way less CPU, and it would still be smooth.
Yeah, but someone who's got this is not on that kind of monitor. Well, you wouldn't think they would.
They shouldn't be. Somebody should be on at least a 100 hertz monitor. Now, I have a 100 hertz monitor at home personally. It's an ultra wide. But of course, that would fully utilize the graphics card because that's 3440 by 1440p, whereas this is 2560 by 1440p. I mean, there's a 1.4 million pixel difference between 1440p ultra wide and 1440p regular. I keep promising one of these days I'm going to do a benchmark video comparing them and pointing out, because then people go, oh, I run 1440p. What are you talking about? Now, here's the fun part. Somebody replied to me on Twitter and said, I have a 3080 and I play at 1440p and my GPU is always maxed. What's wrong with your computer? Turns out he was playing it on ultra wide. Ultra wide 1440p is 5 million pixels.
Yep.
Standard 1440p is 3.6. That is a monster difference. And if you think, well, they're both 1440p, well, you failed math class. So
here's the Burger King application.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yes, honey, staple the Burger King application to their test. That is so funny. I do believe that 16 cores is the future. And if you have the money, and if you want your computer to last more than 3 years, it is not a waste of money. You're buying the best CPU that AM4 is ever going to have. You'll be able to keep it for years. You'll be able to ignore the first generation of AM5. You'll be able to ignore the price increase of DDR5. And you'll be able to go, you know what? I don't have to care. I can do whatever. A year and a half ago, our editor, XD, built himself a personal computer before he even came to work here.
He did.
And he built a Ryzen 9 3900X 12-core 24-thread chip. And the reason he did that is because he originally had built an i5, and that was a mistake. And he upgraded it to an i7, which was a 4-core 8-thread chip. Haswell, I think it was. And he decided when he built his most recent machine, he goes, I'm tired of being limited. I'm tired of having to go, can my computer run this? Oh, I have to close a program, or I can't multitask, or I get stutter when the background task. Screw it. I just want my problems to go. I want my computer to run whatever I want to do. And he has been so happy with it. Hey, over and over, he's like, it's wonderful. I can just run anything I want and not have to care. Do you know what XD's computer does? It serves him.
Yes.
It obeys him. It is there at the snap of his fingers. And so if you have the money, and you can find one, a 16-core chip is not nuts. But the only GPU that I would pair with it is probably a 3090 at this point. And yes, they're expensive. I mean, ideally, you'd find, if you could find a 5950X for $800 and a 3090 for as close to $2,000 as possible, that's a beast. Now, I can already hear the audience. What are you talking about, man? My whole computer's worth $800. That's fine. 4-core, 8-thread CPU, RX 580 or GTX 1060, 1080p, 60 frames per second locked. The Division 2 is remarkably playable. It will not be as smooth as this, it will not be as fast as this, and it will not have the very low input latency. This is a joy to control. Here's something you don't get from benchmark charts. It's butter smooth in play. Hands on the controls, moving the character, there's no hesitation. On lower end chips, when you press the W key to move, there's that bit of hesitation.
I know.
And then your character moves.
Yep.
And then you're getting behind cover and you press space to get behind the cover, or you press control to leap over the cover, and there's a few microseconds of delay. You can adapt to it, you can get used to it. But once you've played it on a beast, you go, whoa, what's it need all that for?
That's why.
It makes the game so responsive that once you've experienced it,
You can't go back.
you go back to the old stuff. So the thing is, I load this game up on a 4-core chip and I go, oh my God. Oh, so it's not playable? No, it's perfectly playable. Well, then what are you complaining about? It sucks. What? Huh? See, this is the problem with all the bloody benchmarks and the bar graphs and the tests and everything else. So you're saying it's playable, but it objectively sucks. Yes, it does. It is dramatically better with 8, 12, or 16 cores. But look at the frame rate. It's fine. Stop looking at charts and graphs and numbers and actually play some games. This is perhaps one of the best examples of a game that scales with cores. And I cannot overemphasize that if you otherwise have the money, I understand not everybody does, I get it. It's not a waste. It's premium. And it's an awesome experience. And that's all I have to say about that. eWin Racing has a wide selection of chairs to fit all shapes and sizes of gamers, ranging from petite to cuddly. They have something for every type of gamer. Not just sizes, but colors and material options as well, including red, blue, purple, pink, orange, and more, plus cloth and leather choices. We have over half a dozen chair and desk videos in a playlist down in the video description below. We also have a very special offer just for Tech Deals viewers. Save 30% off of everything using discount code TechDeals using our link in the video description. We have used eWin gaming chairs for 3 years in our office, sitting on them for up to 8-hour marathon live streams. They are very comfortable, and we are happy to work with eWin to bring you this special discount and recommend eWin for all of your gaming chair and desk needs.